Thank you very much. So this is joint work with Dan Bernstein, Tanya Lange, and Boyan Yang. So I know it's after lunch, so I thought we'd start with some pictures. I don't know who here has ever read The Odyssey by Homer, but when you first read when you start reading The Odyssey, you first meet the protagonist Odysseus when he's trapped in a cave after Zeus has destroyed his ship and killed all of his crew. And I don't know, I was thinking about this for some reason when I was making my slides, and I thought this is kind of a cool story because I don't think there are many books that start with shipwrecks. And I thought, well, people like this story, so maybe I'll start my talk with some shipwrecks. So I wanted to look maybe at a couple shipwrecks in network security. So if we look at some TLS CVEs, this is a recent one. I won't read the whole thing because it's 12 minutes is quite a short time for a talk, but there was a recent CVE in Nginx, the popular web server program, where basically attackers in certain network configurations can bypass certificate client authentication by using TLS session tickets. Here's another one also from this year. This is in an application, a different one that I've actually never heard of before, in Veeam Updater. But basically, there's a man-in-the-middle attack that's possible because TLS certificates are not properly validated. So I just mentioned two of these, but if you look at TLS CVEs, the list is pretty gruesome, actually. So what's the point of that? I mention all of this basically just to highlight that TLS is a really big programming project. So if you want to deploy TLS at scale, you need to integrate it into many protocols and even more applications. And this applies actually not just to TLS, but also to QUIC and DTLS and anything else transport layer. So as the intro slides maybe suggested, the long list of TLS-related CVEs suggests that doing this correctly is not trivial. And then, of course, if you're thinking about like the entire internet ecosystem, I mean, there's tons of applications that don't have any TLS protection at all. And, well, the elephant in the room is that all of the TLS that we're using, or the vast majority of it right now, is pre-quantum, and we need to make it post-quantum ASAP. Meanwhile, we've known actually for quite a while now, this is a screenshot from the Snowden revelations of 2013, that large-scale attackers are basically collecting everything that we do on the internet in the hopes that one day they can decrypt our encrypted traffic with a quantum computer. There has actually been some progress with post-quantum TLS. So for example, if you go to Cloudflare's website, you can see sort of some updated statistics about how much of their TLS connections are actually using a post-quantum TLS library. And so right now it's around 34%. But that's 34% of connections to Cloudflare servers, not 34% of all TLS connections. Still, that's actually really nice, and I hope that this continues to grow. But it's a long way to go before we have universal post-quantum TLS deployment. So you might be asking, if you care about post-quantum cryptography, can we do more to get post-quantum cryptography on the internet sooner? Can we also do it without needing to update all of our applications and libraries? Well, this project is about using network tunneling to address this question. So if you think about network tunneling, probably the first thing you're thinking about are VPNs, because VPNs usually use network tunnels. And VPNs have a really important software engineering advantage. Namely, you don't actually need to modify applications to protect them when you're deploying a VPN. So what this sort of implies is that if you have a post-quantum VPN, and you can deploy a post-quantum VPN, you can protect all of the applications on your machine without needing to wait for those applications to integrate with a post-quantum TLS library. Okay, there are actually some VPNs that are already doing this. So like Mullvad and Rosenpass are two examples. I think they use Classic McLeese and Kyber for their key exchange, and any OpenSSH-based VPN is using Streamlined Entry Prime for a post-quantum cryptographic protection. And, well, there's basically, I guess, I could think of two big use cases with VPNs. One is you're using a VPN to proxy traffic, so you encrypt your traffic to a proxy that then forwards that traffic to an endpoint. And the problem with that, in general, is that this is not an end-to-end solution. So you get protection from your host to the proxy, but everything beyond the proxy is in the clear. Another, I think, very common VPN use case is, for example, if you're a server administrator, you might set up a WireGuard network so that you have end-to-end communication through a WireGuard tunnel to servers that you administer. The problem, though, with that is that, well, you need to know who you're talking to in advance, and you need to configure this VPN to speak to the hosts you're trying to communicate with. So all of that leads us to this. So we want a post-quantum VPN. We want one that gives you end-to-end protection, and we want one that doesn't require you to know in advance who you're talking to. We want something that's end-to-end and automatic peer discovery. So PQConnect is the project that we developed to address this. So PQConnect is sort of like a VPN in that it protects network for all the it protects network traffic for all of the applications on your host. But unlike a VPN, PQConnect automatically discovers peers and creates end-to-end post-quantum tunnels with them. What does the configuration look like for PQConnect? Well, if you're running PQConnect as a client, the configuration is you install PQConnect. If you're running PQConnect on your server, then you install PQConnect, and you also publish an announcement that your server name supports PQConnect. How am I doing on time, by the way? Okay. The important thing, though, is just that you don't need a peer-specific configuration, and that's the really cool part. Okay, so how do PQConnect clients discover PQConnect servers, and how do they do that without sending lots of extra requests to those servers? We use DNS to advertise server support for PQConnect. So if you're, for example, doing a DNS query for the website www.ndsssymposium.org, you might send an IP version 4 lookup to a DNS resolver, and you might get a response that looks like this. You get an A record, well, in this case, 2 A records, that associate the name of the site you're looking up to the IP addresses of the servers. Sometimes you get something that's a bit more complicated. So, for example, if you do a DNS lookup for Amazon, you get something that looks sort of like this, or at least I did, might be different now. But you would see, for example, 3 records returned. The first one is a CNAME record that points Amazon's name to something that I'm not going to read out. In the second line, you see that same thing pointing to another C record. And in the third line, you see that last thing pointing to an IP address. And that last thing is the actual A record, and that's the IP address that gets returned to the application. So CNAME records are returned automatically when making an A record query, and usually clients just follow this chain of CNAMEs to the IP address, and along the way they're ignoring these intermediate CNAMEs. But we don't have to ignore them. So for example, if you do a DNS query for www.pqconnect.net, you'll get a response that looks like this. You have the website pointing to a CNAME, which has this PQ1 followed by a lot of characters that don't really mean anything to you as a human. And then that CNAME points to the A record, the IP address where that server is located. So PQ1 in this record is just a magic number that sort of advertises support for PQConnect, and the characters that follow it are base 32 encoded hash of the public key. That's the hash of the long-term server public key for PQConnect. So what happens is, if you're a PQConnect client, you can see this announcement and use it to establish a tunnel with the server. If you're a non-PQConnect client, well, you just ignore all the extra information and you just connect normally. But importantly, no extra requests are sent to the server. So, okay, well, let's say we are running PQConnect and we see this advertisement. 2 minutes. Okay, well, let's speed this up a bit. Let's see. The thing I wanted to say on this slide basically is that we can efficiently route traffic to PQConnect by essentially doing a sort of network address translation on the DNS response that's returned. So we get the actual IP address, but we rename it to something that routes to our application. And that's how we can protect all of the traffic between client and server when we discovered it's using PQConnect. So, for example, if your application calls some C library function getAddrInfo on NDSS symposium.org, it will get the real IP address and it'll establish a TCP handshake to that address. But if you do it for PQConnect.net, you'll get this other address, which is local, and it'll send a TCP handshake to the local address. And now your connection is routed through PQConnect. I don't have time to go into a ton of detail about the key exchange, but you can see here which schemes we're using, and the graphic on the right is basically a pictographic representation of how the schemes are organized in the key exchange message. So every, the innermost key exchange messages are essentially protected by secrets derived from the key exchange schemes that are outside of it. And we're using both pre-quantum and post-quantum schemes so that, well, if any future attacks against the post-quantum schemes are discovered, at least we don't have anything worse than what is state-of-the-art today. Oh yeah, and we also modeled the handshake message in Tamarin and proved some security properties about it, and of course that's in the paper. Okay, some last things are just that lots of people usually think of classic McLeese and realize that they have large public keys. This is not actually a huge problem for us because these keys are efficiently cached, so clients don't have to actually request them very often. They can reuse them. I'll skip the second one. The last thing I just want to say is we also protect against physical attacks on servers. So if a person wants to steal a server and steal key material from that server to decrypt past traffic, we ensure that keys are erased after at most 2 minutes to limit this attack's surface as well. Okay, if you'd like to see the, if you'd like to download it and run it and read the paper and the docs, you can go to www.pqconnect.net. We also have a Zulip server if you want to pay attention to the project and get in touch and ask questions and give us feedback. And that's everything. Thanks.
Okay, many thanks. And questions?
Hi.
Hi.
It's Barry Lebo. Very clever use of the signaling through the CNAME. I like that.
Thank you.
Also, just a side thing that it's funny that I still see www dot all over the place, which hasn't been needed for about 15 years. But anyway, we use TLS for two basic things. One is the making an encrypted tunnel, and one is doing server authentication through the certificate. Does this do anything to help protect the latter?
So the question is, how do you know that the key you're using is from the server you want to connect to?
Yes.
There are, yeah, that's a really good question. And right now, the idea is that we are depending on the security of DNS to establish authenticity. What's not obvious to a lot of people is that TLS also depends on the security of DNS to establish authenticity. Because if I control the DNS for a server, I can get a Let's Encrypt TLS certificate, and I can, impersonate that server. So we do need DNS security to protect both of these things. One hopeful thing from our perspective that will happen is you can run DNS over PQConnect. I mean, so there's DNS over TLS, there's DNS over HTTPS. You can, there's multiple protocols to protect DNS traffic. In principle, you could use PQConnect to bootstrap this. So this is, for example, how the Minimalt protocol works. So it uses a known directory service. It establishes a tunnel to that directory service, and then uses that directory service bootstrapping that tunnel to create other tunnels with other hosts that the client doesn't know. It's a to-do, but yeah, it's a very important one, so thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I feel like the PQConnect is like similar to IPsec. What is the difference between the PQConnect and traditional IPsec?
Sure, so IPsec has actually a tunnel mode and I'm sort of blanking right now. Sorry, transport mode. Yeah, so this is in terms of the layer of the network stack that it's using, it's similar to tunnel mode of IPsec, but IPsec is still just a traditional VPN that you need to know what the proxy that you're communicating with is in advance. So the main benefit, or one of the main benefits that we have in PQConnect, is that you don't need to know in advance who you're talking to. You can still get the same network protection, even if you're talking to a server you've never heard of before.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, speaker again.